The studio lights bathed the stage in gold. A hush settled over the New York skyline as dawn cracked through steel and glass. The View's high-rise set gleamed with its usual glossy precision makeup, artists brushing last strokes, crew members aligning cameras, the teleprompter scrolling silently. Everything looked ... calm. Like something was off, like the breath before an earthquake. In the green room, Denzel Washington sat alone. Silent. Still. The room buzzed around him, but he didn't move. He didn't glance at his phone, didn't sip his water. His posture was straight, his eyes locked on the muted monitor playing a live feed of the show. He wasn't just waiting, he was studying. The hosts were already on set. Whoopi Goldberg at the center, flanked by Joy Behar and Sarah N., the rest rounding out the panel in jewel tones and practiced poise. Whoopi's smirk curled just slightly as she tapped her note cards against the glass table. It was the look she gave before going in for the intellectual kill. The crowd had no idea what was coming. Cue the music, applause, and now Whoopi said, beaming directly into the camera. He's a living legend, a force in cinema, and someone whose voice on screen and off demands attention. Please welcome Denzel Washington. The audience erupted. Denzel stepped out with a slow, deliberate grace. No swagger, no theatrics, just presence. That unmistakable, spine-straightening, crowd-silencing presence. His handshake was firm, his nod subtle. He didn't smile much, just enough to acknowledge, but not enough to distract. And then he sat. Whoopi wasted no time. "Your new film is powerful," she began, her voice coated in that velvet lilt she used when laying traps. "It deals with themes of race, justice, media manipulation, and truth in a world drowning in opinion. Don't you think in times like these, Hollywood has a responsibility to push a more progressive message?" It was the kind of question designed to sound neutral. But it wasn't. The audience leaned forward. The crew went still. Even Joy stopped mid-sip of her coffee. Denzel blinked once, then leaned back, folded his hands in his lap, locked eyes with Whoopi and said, calmly, "The real question is, why do you assume Hollywood needs to push any message at all?" Boom. The first domino fell. A quiet murmur rippled across the audience. Joy Behar straightened. Sarah N. glanced at the teleprompter like it would save her. In the control booth, producers hovered over the commercial cut switch, but no one touched it. This was no longer a promo spot. This was live tension. Whoopi's smile twitched. "We influence culture," she said, her head cocked just slightly. "Shouldn't we use that influence to help people grow?" Denzel tilted his head. His tone didn't shift, but the room seemed to drop 5 degrees. "Is it helping?" he asked. "If we only amplify voices that echo our own." Joy's brow furrowed. Sarah scribbled something. The audience leaned in so far you could hear the creak of studio chairs. "Because I've watched this show," Denzel continued, "and what I see isn't dialogue, it's performance, masquerading as conversation." The air left the room in the control booth. Someone said, "Do we cut to break?" No one answered. "We do invite all kinds of perspectives," Whoopi said, but her voice had lost its lilt. "Do you?" Denzel's tone never changed. "Or do you just invite people you know you can corner, challenge, or discredit?" That was when the audience realized what was happening. This wasn't a guest promoting a film. This wasn't casual banter. This was a takedown, with scalpel precision. Whoopi leaned forward now, her fingers tightening around her cards. "We don't silence people," she said, her voice sharpening. "We steer conversation toward truth." Denzel didn't blink. Whose truth? A gasp. Not dramatic, not forced, real. Joy put her coffee down without drinking. Sarah looked at the producer, mouthing, "Are we still rolling?" Denzel sat upright. Now, not aggressive, not angry, just ... present. Impossibly present. "I've spent my career telling stories that challenge people. Not to push a message, but because I believe in the power of narrative to uncover truth, not prescribe it." Sarah cut in, voice shaky. "But don't you think certain narratives, if left unchecked, can cause harm?" Denzel nodded once. "Sure, but who decides what's dangerous? The audience or the gatekeepers?" Whoopi's jaw clenched. "We're not gatekeepers. Denzel didn't wait. You're platforms? And if platforms only allow one worldview, they stop being places of conversation, and become tools of indoctrination. Word. Indoctrination. It sliced through the studio like a blade. The audience stopped reacting. They weren't clapping, weren't laughing, just watching. Because now, it wasn't about a movie. It wasn't even about Whoopi. It was about all of them. Hollywood media, the system. Denzel held the floor with the kind of control that doesn't come from yelling, but from truth. "I came here to talk about a film," he said. "About human struggle, but I can't sit on this stage and pretend I don't see the pattern." Joy dared to speak. "What pattern?" Denzel turned to her now. "The pattern of bringing on guests, then cutting them off when things get uncomfortable. The pattern of cloaking ideological control in the language of inclusion." Camera operators zoomed slowly instinctively into Whoopi's face. She wasn't blinking, her lips pressed thin. Her usual arsenal of sarcasm and sass had evaporated. Denzel wasn't done. "Hollywood shouldn't be a pulpit," he said. "It should be a mirror. And right now, a lot of people in power would rather shatter that mirror than face what it shows." Silence. Thick, sticky silence. The audience didn't cheer. They didn't boo. They just sat there, silent, still processing, because something real had happened. Something raw. And it hadn't even been 20 minutes. Denzel leaned back in his chair again. Collected. Unshaken, across the table. Whoopi didn't speak. Joy looked at her notes as if they could teleport her out of the room. Sarah looked like she was holding her breath, and then cut to commercial. But even as the studio lights dimmed, the tension didn't fade. It hung in the air like smoke, thick, charged, unresolved, and everyone watching knew, this wasn't over. The commercial break ended, but the energy in the studio didn't reset. Not this time. Cameras blinked red, counting silently. Crew members exchanged nervous glances, and the audience, they didn't clap when the lights came back on. They didn't have to. Their silence said everything. The table was quiet. Whoopi sat stiffly, her fingers still gripping the edge of the glass desk, like it was the only thing keeping her grounded. Her eyes burned not with embarrassment, but with something colder, older, pride, deep, immovable pride. Denzel hadn't moved. Same chair, same posture, same unsettling calm. He wasn't a guest anymore. He was the axis, the center of gravity, the silent force, dismantling an institution, one syllable at a time. Then finally Whoopi broke the silence. "You know what, Denzel?" Her voice was low, controlled, too controlled. "You come in here with your movies, your monologues, and you act like you've got all the answers." Denzel didn't react. Not a flinch, not a twitch. She leaned in. "You don't know what it's like to be in this seat every day, to take the bullets, to fight trolls, critics, threats, and through all of that, still show up." The audience stirred, some murmurs, some nods, but Denzel still . "Until last week," he said quietly, "but cutting. You cut off a guest for simply suggesting that there's more than one way to look at a complex issue." Whoopi blinked. That wasn't where she expected this to go. "You didn't challenge her," Denzel continued. "You scoffed. You rolled your eyes. You dismissed her." The crew flinched. Someone in the control room whispered, "We're going to get letters. We welcome all views here," Whoopi said defensively. "We always have." "No," Denzel said. "You welcome views you're confident you can frame. Challenge, box in. You invite opposition you already know how to defeat. That's not dialogue. That's theater." Joy tried to laugh one of those nervous, "Let's lighten this up," chuckles. No one joined her. Even she looked startled by her own tone. "You're accusing us of what being fake?" she asked, more confused than combative. "I'm saying, you've confused performance with purpose," Denzel said, eyes still locked on Whoopi. "You say you want truth, but only when it doesn't make you uncomfortable." Whoopi's eyes narrowed. "This isn't just a stage to me," she said, voice shaking now. "It's a responsibility. People look to us for guidance, for clarity, for strength, and that's the problem," Denzel said. That landed. The studio fell still again. He leaned forward now, just slightly. "You think being on this stage gives you the right to shape people's beliefs, but maybe it should be the opposite. Maybe being here means you have the responsibility to listen." Whoopi sat back, stiff, her arms crossed tight across her chest. Denzel continued. "You said you show up every day and take the bullets. And, you're right, That takes strength. But strength doesn't mean shutting people down. It means letting the hard conversations happen even when they make you sweat. Sarah finally spoke. Her voice was a whisper, almost too small for the mic. So, where's the line? Between letting people speak and letting them spread harmful ideas, Denzel turned his head toward her. There's no easy answer, he said, but silencing isn't safety, and discomfort isn't danger. If we treat every disagreement as a threat, we'll end up afraid of each other forever. The audience listened like it was church, not a cough, not a whisper. Every eye on him. Whoopi looked down now, her jaw working like she was chewing on every word. Joy had gone quiet. Sarah's pen stopped tapping, and Denzel was just getting started. You know what I see? He said. I see people afraid to lose control of the narrative, because control feels like safety. But real growth, real truth that lives in chaos, in discomfort, in tension. Like this, right now, the director hovered over the cut button. They didn't press it. Whoopi spoke again, her voice suddenly sharp. Maybe you should stick to acting. A gasp from the audience, from the crew, from Joy. Denzel blinked. Slowly. You think I'm acting? He asked, softly. No reply. Acting is pretending, he said. But what I'm doing right now, this is real. This is the kind of conversation that doesn't happen on sets. It doesn't happen in green rooms. It happens when people stop playing characters and start being honest. Whoopi looked down at her cards. She didn't flip them, didn't read from them, just held them like a shield. Don't lecture me, she said. I've been in this game longer than you've been famous. And I respect that, Denzel replied. But respect doesn't mean silence. Respect means I challenge you when you start mistaking your position for perfection. Joy finally tried to interject. Maybe this has gone too far. No, Denzel said firmly. What's gone too far is this idea that challenging someone means attacking them. That dissent equals disrespect. He turned back to Whoopi. I'm not your enemy, but I won't let you rewrite what this moment is. There was a pause, a long, dangerous pause. Then Whoopi stood not with grace, not with elegance. She stood like she'd been backed into a corner. You don't get to come into my house, she said through gritted teeth, and talk down to me. Denzel stood too, but slower, straighter, more composed. This isn't your house, he said. It's a platform, and every platform yours mine. Everyone's comes with accountability, not control. The room felt radioactive. Now, the crew stood frozen behind the cameras. The audience sat in stunned silence. Every heartbeat sounded like a drum. I don't need to be here, Whoopi snapped. Then why are you? Denzel asked, genuine curiosity. In his voice, that stopped her cold, he turned to the audience, not the camera. The people sitting 20 feet away. This isn't about me versus her, he said. This is about how we talk to each other, how we listen, or don't. And then he turned to the camera, direct, sincere. You came here to watch a movie interview, but what you got is something else, something rare. This isn't what conversation should look like. Messy, hard, human. The red recording light glowed brighter somehow, because the moment we stop listening to each other, he said, we lose the very thing that makes dialogue worth having. Whoopi stared at him, her arms still crossed. But something had shifted. In her eyes, the fury hadn't disappeared, but the certainty behind it. That was cracking. The applause light didn't blink. No one clapped, not yet. Everyone was still inside it, inside the moment. And they knew it wasn't over, not even close. The air inside the studio had changed. It was no longer just thick with tension. It was electric, not a storm, but the moment before lightning strikes, still charged, waiting. The cameras didn't blink. Neither did the audience. And in that suffocating stillness, Joy Behar finally cracked. Her voice was a thin thread. Maybe we need to cool things down, take a beat, reset. But no one moved, not the hosts, not the guest, not the truth sitting between them, unspoken but alive. Denzel turned back toward Whoopi. His tone was unchanged, low, steady, but there was a fire behind his eyes now, not anger, conviction. I came here for a conversation, he said. But this, he motioned to the table, to the rigid postures, to the controlled expressions. This isn't a conversation. This is a performance, a ritual of dominance. Disguised as discussion, Whoopi's nostrils flared. her hands curled into fists against the table. "You think you're the first guest to come here with a chip on his shoulder?" she snapped. "I don't have a chip," Denzel said. "Have a voice. And I'm tired of seeing platforms like this pretend they're amplifying voices, when all they're really doing is curating ones they can manage." "You don't know what we manage," she shot back. "You don't know what we deal with." Off camera, after the segment, when the lights go off and the emails come in, "I don't need to," he said, "because I know what happens on camera. I know what millions see, and they see a space that punishes honesty if it doesn't echo. The narrative," Joy tried to laugh again. Okay. So we're all media villains now." "No," Denzel said. "You're just scared, and fear makes us small, makes us lash out, makes us defend even our worst instincts." "Are you calling me scared?" Whoopi asked, her voice trembling with rage. "I'm saying you're human," he replied. "But maybe you've forgotten that the people you're shutting down, they're human too." The audience sat motionless. Every twitch of a finger, every breath, every glance was being absorbed by cameras by millions. Sarah leaned forward, unsure if she was breaking protocol, but unable to stay silent. "Then how do we do it, Denzel?" she asked. "How do we keep this space honest without opening the door to chaos?" Denzel didn't blink. "You don't prevent chaos," he said. "You guide through it. You admit when you're wrong. You stop confusing control with leadership. You stop framing your discomfort as moral clarity." Whoopi stood up again, faster this time. "I fought my way here, through racism, sexism, every ism you can name. And I will not be lectured by someone who doesn't know what it means to be me." Denzel stood too, but the difference in their energies was a story in itself. Where Whoopi was fire, he was earth, solid, immovable. "I do know what it means to fight," he said, "but fighting doesn't justify silencing. You think your struggle has given you the right to shut doors behind you. That's not progress, that's gatekeeping. You don't know me," she snapped. "And you don't know how you look from the outside anymore," he replied. That silenced her. The audience gasped softly, almost reflexively. Whoopi's face was stone, but her hands betrayed her. They trembled. Joy leaned over, whispering something to a producer off camera. No one heard the words, but her eyes screamed, "Do we pull the plug?" The answer was clear, no. Because this was bigger than ratings. This was cultural, national, global. Sarah tried to speak again, but Whoopi raised her hand, silencing her. And for the first time, not out of control, but out of something deeper. Fatigue, fear, uncertainty. "I don't need to be perfect," Whoopi said finally. "I just need to protect people from ideas that harm, and who decides what harms?" Denzel asked gently, "You, the audience, the advertisers. Who draws the line?" "No one," she said. "We all do, together." "Then stop drawing." "It alone," he replied. Another silence, longer, heavier. Denzel single quotes as voice dropped lower. "Do you remember why you started this show?" "Whoopi." She didn't answer. He kept going. Was it to control the conversation, or to have one? Now she looked. At him. Really looked. And for just a flash of a second, she blinked. The mask slipped, only slightly, but enough for the audience to feel it. Joy Behar's voice cracked the silence. You two could both be right, but neither of them acknowledged her, because this wasn't a debate anymore. It was a mirror, and Whoopi was finally looking into it. "This isn't your movie set," she said. "This is real life, real stakes, I know," Denzel said. "That's why I'm still here." She turned to the camera. A veteran's move, a practiced shift, but her voice was unsteady. To those watching, she said, "You saw passion today. You saw disagreement, but that doesn't mean we're enemies." Denzel turned to face the same camera. "But if you keep treating disagreement as danger, you'll never hear anything again but your own echo." The camera operator didn't breathe. The control room didn't breathe. The entire country, it seemed, had paused. Then Whoopi said, almost inaudibly, "So what do we do now?" Denzel smiled for the first time. It wasn't smug. It wasn't triumphant. It was human. "We listen," he said. The screen didn't fade. The show didn't cut to commercial. It just stayed on them, frozen in a moment that felt like the beginning of something or the end of everything. The stage was still lit, but it no longer felt like a television set. It felt like a courtroom, a sanctuary, a battlefield. It felt like truth had walked in, uninvited, and demanded to be heard. No laugh tracks, no applause, signs, just silence. The weight of consequence. Denzel Washington remained standing, centered but not dominant. His presence didn't eclipse others, it reflected them. And right now, all it reflected was the aftermath of confrontation. Across the table, Whoopi Goldberg looked smaller than she had at the start of the segment, not in stature, but in spirit. Her voice had gone quiet, her shoulders, usually squared with righteous authority, now sloped inward, drawn tight with conflict. Something had broken, not shattered, not destroyed, cracked, enough to let light in. The audience had stopped shifting. In their seats, no murmurs, no side glances, just breathless attention. Then, at long last, Sarah N. leaned forward, hands shaking slightly. "Can I say something?" she whispered. All heads turned. "Maybe this isn't about who's right," she said, voice trembling. "Maybe it's about how far we've all drifted from what this space was supposed to be." Joy Behar nodded slowly. It was supposed to be a table, not a pulpit, not a firing squad. Whoopi's eyes didn't move, but tears clung to the corners of them. "I built this," she finally said, her voice like gravel, brick by brick, show by show, through hate mail and threats, through studio notes and cancellations, through decades. "I know," Denzel replied softly, "and it was never easy," she continued, "never safe. You sit there and you talk about performance, but every day I wake up knowing I have to perform just to stay in the seat I earned." He stepped closer, but not aggressively, just close enough that his voice dropped lower, warmer, almost fatherly. "No one's asking you to give up the seat," he said. "We're asking you to make room at the table." Her lip trembled. She looked away, not out of shame, but out of the sheer force of realizing how much truth could hurt when it wasn't dressed up in politeness. "I'm tired," she said. "No," he said again. "But tired doesn't mean done. It means human." That word human hung in the air like a lifeline. Sarah wiped a tear discreetly. Even Joy was silent, her usual wit gone. There was no punchline to save this, only the possibility of change. And then Whoopi stood again, not in defiance, not in fury. She stood like a woman holding a weight she finally recognized. She reached into her jacket pocket, pulled out a single card, the final cue card for the segment, and held it up. Then she slowly, deliberately, tore it in half. The audience gasped, but she wasn't finished. She turned to the producers behind the cameras, voice low but resolute. "No cuts, no commercials, no edits. This one airs exactly how it happened." A murmur of stunned dissent rolled across the control room. She turned back to Denzel. "I don't know if you're right," she said, "but I know I needed to hear it." He smiled again, not victorious, grateful. Then he looked into the camera, not like an actor, not like a politician, like a man. "America," he said, "we can't keep screaming past each other and calling it dialogue. We can't counsel people into silence and call it justice. And we can't build a better future if we're too afraid to be uncomfortable." The lens zoomed slightly in. "We don't need safe conversations," he said. "We need honest ones." A single clap echoed from the audience. Then another, then silence again. This time not out of shock, but out of reverence. Whoopi nodded, not to Denzel, not to the crew, to herself. She sat back down. "I don't promise to change overnight," she said. "No one should," Denzel replied, "but everyone should try." There were no credits rolling, no theme music swelling, just raw humanity. Joy finally broke the silence, her voice light but trembling. "Well, that was the most meaningful 15 minutes of TV I've seen in my life." Sarah smiled, and the scariest, Whoopi glanced around the table, then directly into the camera. "To our viewers," she said, "thank you for staying, for witnessing, for listening, even when it hurt." She paused. "And if you're out there hurting, yelling, scrolling, surviving, I hope you find space to talk and to listen." The red light above the camera flickered, signaling the end of the broadcast. But the story wasn't over, because as the lights dimmed and the crew exhaled for the first time in an hour, the world outside was already waking. Clips flooded Twitter. Hashtags ignited. The confrontation became legend before the end credits even rolled. But not because of scandal, because of truth. because someone dared to say, the able to look at the system and ask, why do we fear voices that challenge us? In the days that followed, the media spun their narratives. Cable news dissected every word. Fans picked sides. Headlines screamed. But deeper than all of that, something began to shift. Viewers started asking for more than noise, more than spin. They wanted dialogue. And somewhere inside that studio, in a quiet dressing room, after the chaos, Whoopi sat alone, defending just thinking. For the first time in a long time, she wasn't trying to win, she was trying to understand. And somewhere across the city, Denzel Washington walked out into the daylight, face to the wind, not as a star, not as a guest, but as a man who told the truth, and let it stand, no matter the cost, because some moments aren't about winning, they're about waking up, and now, everyone was awake. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share if this hit your soul. This isn't just another celebrity story, it's a mirror, and sometimes it reflects more than we're ready to see. Want the next one to be even more intense? Let me know the next pair of celebrities you want in a confrontation, and I'll craft a brand new cinematic takedown, unscripted TV implosion, or Netflix-style verbal warfare.